Hey everyone, it's me, DB. Just reminding you, we have t-shirts in the shop. Just go to pgttcm.com. Check out all of our cool t-shirts and stickers. Heck, we even got some shelf curtains in there. Keep clean, look cool, have cool stickers to put on stuff. Join us on Patreon and get a free sticker. Or don't. It's up to you. This episode is brought to you by Donner. Check out the show notes to find a good deal at Donner. Like the sound of this? This is the Donner Island Delay and the really cool Donner LP that I've shown off on Instagram. Check it out. They've got some really good summer deals, and check out their snap deals as well. Use the link in the show notes to help support the show. Get yourself some cool musical instruments, maybe some patch cords. Cool.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Greetings, listeners. It is I, DB Spitzer and Farmer Dave, here once again to talk to you about the Cthulhu mythos, its books, its monsters, its unfortunate human casualties, its timeline in general, and even its tangential bits, like the dreamlands or things of a weird nature that are Lovecraftian leaning. Once more we head into those dark woods, further feeling those malevolent forces upon us. Once again we walk down the lightless stone staircase in the middle of nowhere.
You're listening to KZOM.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to People's Guide to Cthulhu Mythos. I am one of your hosts, DB Spitzer, and to my virtual right, as always, David Heath. Farmer Dave, how the heck is it going? How are things on the farm, and are you doing well?
So the farm is doing well. I am doing well. Although I had forgotten that we live in northern Oregon.
Yeah.
And this stuff started falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
And who'd guess? It's water.
Yeah, it started raining again, which was really, really, really nice. The cemetery had turned a nice, spiky, kind of beigeish brown as the grass had died, and the mayor's been saying we need to reserve water for certain city projects. What the city, I'm not part of the city council anymore. I'm not part of the mayor's office. So, I don't know what's going on, but it's okay to let the cemetery dry out because we're saving water, and I don't know. Doesn't sound like the greatest to me, but you don't have that problem up on the farm. You're not part of really the town in that way, like.
No, we're our own well system, so we're on our own aquifer.
Yeah.
But we had the fires up to a couple weeks ago. Nothing really close.
Yeah, nothing close, thankfully.
But this whole area of Portland had the fourth worst air quality in all of the world.
Yeah.
And so it's bringing back horrors. When I was a kid, 80s, 90s. I don't know if you remember, but the fear of acid rain.
Oh, yeah.
And it turned out, fortunately, we kind of reduced the amount of, stuff that we were throwing in the atmosphere a little bit. But as a child, I was always like, better put on my, an extra raincoat, because if not, the acid rain might burn my skin. So as a child, I always had to put on a second raincoat because I was so afraid that, the acid rain would get to me and it would burn my skin, which of course it never did. But it brought back traumatic childhood flashbacks. Tomorrow maybe we'll have a Y2K flashback.
Yeah, no, I don't remember ever being worried about Y2K acid rain. I was primarily worried about domestic terrorists and chemical warfare and Cold War stuff.
Oh, speaking of Cold War, childhood 80s stuff, we've got an interview today.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
With Mark Miller, and his story, he is the author of The Librarian at the End of the World.
Oh, okay.
And in December, he's got a new novel coming out, and it's called The Two-Headed Woman. at the end of the world.
Okay, cool.
And it sort of it takes place in Texarkana, Texas /Arkansas, and which is a real city. It's actually half on one side of the state, half on the other.
Okay, all right.
And what it's basically the 80s nuclear war happened, and there's mutations and weird experiments.
Gotcha.
And it's absurdism, but it's coming back in vogue. You know, we're worried about the Russians again. We're worried about the environment.
Yeah.
So we'll be covering a little bit about that in our Part 2 interview section with Mark Miller.
Very nice, very nice. I'm excited to hear that. All right, so this week we're going back to Dave's Corner of the Podcast, and Dave's going to talk to us all. This is more like Dave's Corner of the Podcast, this part right here. The interview part's the interview part, but I always put the Dave's Corner of the Podcast song there because Dave does all the hard work. But this reminds me what we're talking about now of the stuff found on Dave's Corner of the about Nyarlathotep and its many forms. And two that we're going to be talking about today is one that Dave's going to talk about for a while there, the Faceless God. And then we've got the Floating Horror that we're going to chat about. All right, Dave, take it away on the Faceless God.
Yeah, so the heavy work this week was, oh no, I had to read Robert Bloch's short story.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was so difficult and hard. I love Robert Bloch.
Sure, yeah.
And I think the best non-Lovecraftian mythos story will be his Notebook Found in an Abandoned Farm.
Yeah.
And this one is very interesting, and so we talked a little bit a couple weeks ago where Nyarlathotep in 1944 talked about, seeing the god, the effigies of the gods not having a face.
Yeah.
May have given him a little more credit than I should have.
Yeah.
Because Robert Bloch wrote The Faceless God. It was published in 1936.
Okay.
So it was published 8 years. So Nyarlathotep was basically continuing and riffing on what Bloch wrote.
Well, it's what Nyarlathotep does best.
Yeah,
in regards to the Cthulhu mythos. In regards to the Cthulhu mythos, his other writings that aren't mythos related apparently are really good. But
Sac Prairie.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like I said, I don't know exactly when this was written, but it was published in May 1936. Makes me think that it was written in 1935 or early 1936.
Okay, all right.
That would have made Bloch either 18 or 19 years old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and this is Bloch's heyday of his communications with Lovecraft, the writing. And soon after this, Lovecraft is just going to get that devastating review of Mountain of Madness, and he's going to start getting sick.
Okay.
And even if you won't admit it, he realizes that there's something going on physically. So he's going to withdraw from writing shortly after this, depending on when it was written.
All right.
And I don't think Bloch held on to things like Lovecraft did. Lovecraft, even Robert E. Howard, would publish things 4 years, posthumously after he died. Bloch's too young. I mean, I know he started writing like when he was 10 or 12, but I can't imagine that he wrote this any earlier than 17.
Yeah.
So there is the Faceless God, which is the story, and then Faceless God is the being. Now, the main character, and the main character it's a villain, not even an anti-hero. It doesn't have a first name, but it's spelled Stugatche.
Okay.
So I've heard different versions. As near as I can tell, I just went into, I don't think it's a real name.
Okay, all right.
I think Block made it up. And so I pronounced it in my head Stugatche.
Okay.
I've heard other people just pronounce it Stugatche.
Yeah.
He's a European who works on this was written in 1936, but spoilers. But he's a European who works in Egypt because he's basically run out of Europe.
Uh-huh.
He's basically, if you took all the charming stuff out of Bolash from Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's who this guy is, and gave him maybe another extra 100 pounds.
Gotcha.
So, like I said, as near as I can tell, Stugatche or Stugatche is not a real word. But it seems to might have been based on like an Italian swear word.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like something that you would hear someone, bite their thumb at someone and call them a dirty Stugatche or something like that. Is what's been kicking around in my head. Yeah.
So there's parts of Italy. There's a very closely sounding euphemism for the male anatomy.
Gotcha.
But you don't ask.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Okay.
So it's a euphemism for the male anatomy, but you don't actually use it when you are describing the male anatomy.
Gotcha.
It's always something else as an insult.
Sure. Okay.
And, if Lovecraft had created the word, then I would have said, that's just coincidence. Robert E. Howard, too, I would have thought maybe just this cool word.
Yeah.
But it's possible that Block, even, 1819 when he wrote this, might have actually done this as a pun. Because this guy really is this total jerk, he it starts with him torturing someone to get information. So, I'm not sure exactly where the word comes from. It, like I said, it doesn't seem to be, it seems to be something Block wrote or made up.
All right. Huh.
So for the story, and, again, this is a 84-year-old story?
Yeah.
Or 86-year-old story. There'll be spoilers.
Okay.
But a couple of things that we see here. So Dr. Stugatche is basically, he's a European, doesn't even say which country he's from.
Yeah.
But is forced to Egypt to basically becomes an artifact smuggler.
All right.
And in fact, if you took all the cool stuff and personality out of Bolash from Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Belloc?
Gave him
Belloc, what does I call it?
Gave him an extra 100 pounds. That would be Stugatche.
Okay. All right.
And so he starts by torturing this Bedouin to find out this location of the Faceless God, which is a statue about the man size of a sphinx with no face. And it's obviously going to be very valuable to him. So Block sets up a couple things in this book that are going to kind of come back more often. So one of them is this idea of an avatar. He doesn't use the word avatar, but this idea that there are more than one Nyarlathotep.
Okay.
That he is there in sort of some main form, kind of like Lovecraft's prose poem.
Oh, okay.
But that he has these 1,000 other spirits or masks or representations, so that it is even possible that, for lack of a better word, Nyarlathotep Prime could talk to the Faceless God.
Yeah.
They could even interact.
Okay.
So there's the Faceless God is the name of the short story.
Yeah.
But the deity is just Faceless God.
Oh, okay.
So just that's so when you're talking about the Faceless God, it's the story. Faceless God is the God.
Okay.
And another thing is that he brings up this idea that there was actual opposition by the ancient Egyptian government or religion or secret society that actively tried to destroy all references of Nyarlathotep.
Oh, wow.
And that they did in most things, but that it still snuck away through and block name drops, things like Necronomicon, the Book of Eben, Mysteries of the Worm.
Sure.
But that it's removed from, or he's removed from the mainstream Egyptian mythology, but all the negative stories, all the negative aspects of the Egyptian gods like Set and Sebek and are leftover stories about Nyarlathotep.
Oh.
They carry over even though they're attributed to these fictitious gods.
Okay. Huh.
So basically, Sagachi is trying to get this this artifact, this giant faceless Sphinx statue.
Yeah.
And he ends up either killing or running off all of his workers. So he's stuck in the desert. But he's smart enough. He travels at night. He can make it to an oasis. But he keeps traveling around in circles. And he just doesn't seem... He just can't find his way out no matter how hard he tries. And then comes this huge storm, and the next thing we know, he realizes that, he looks in the face and he sees the statue and he sees the cosmos. And then it ends with the sandstorm coming and Sagachi basically being covered up to his neck in sand. And all he can do is just repeat Nyarlathotep's name over and over and over again.
Oh, wow.
And so this is... It's not a perfect story. It's not a perfect mythos story.
Yeah.
But for written by a 19-year-old, it's darn good. I mean, it's up there. It's in no way, say, up with some of Block's best, like yours truly, Jack the Ripper.
Sure.
Or even, the Yugoslavian, which is again, spoilers. It's a Dracula.
Oh.
The narrator turns out to be Dracula at the end. But it's a good, solid Block story. It's a good, solid interpretation of one of the Masks of Nyarlathotep, or Nyarlathotep. And a lot of what he takes is Avatar idea, these governmental or religious attempt to block out the mention of the great old ones and the older gods. This whole sort of, and it's kind of a cross, and not exactly, but it takes the action adventure of Howard and the concepts of Lovecraft and cosmic horror, puts it somewhere right in the middle.
That's cool. That's super cool.
And so it's a good, solid story. If you're a moderate reader, you can probably read it in 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's a good, strong story, and I think it's a good interpretation of Nyarlathotep.
Okay, cool. Very cool. I like that. The next aspect, face, whatever you want to call, is the floating horror from Haate. This form of Nyarlathotep manifests itself through a body that's prepared and presented for this jellyfish with like red veins going through it, and the jellyfish is like bluish in color, and it's for a fringe voodoo cult, and it's from the story Star Pools by Ateneso.
And I found very little about that online, other than a very cool picture of it.
Yeah, there's a cool picture of it, and a website in German, so we don't know if this is, I'm guessing if it's in German, it's probably for Cthulhu Spieler or whatever, whatever Call of Cthulhu's called in German, in the German language. So in the German language, it's a cool concept, and if you just wanted to like steal the base concept for like your little stories and stuff like that, or your little RPGs or any projects you've got going on, check out the Star Pools if you can find it, because we were not able to. So again, anything you have to say about the floating horror?
That, and then I guess it has also been used, is the term, has also been used in a couple of, like, antagonists and monsters in video games.
Okay.
But, again, I just couldn't find any connection.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, all right. Well, everyone, that's that part of the show. Right now, I've been trying to, like, keep the sound off mic, because who wants to listen to me slurp on my Copper Cow coffee? I'm drinking the vanilla right now. I'm not generally a fan of having flavors in my coffee, but Copper Cow does it right. They actually put, like, little bits of vanilla in with the coffee, so when you do your pour-over, it's not like artificial vanilla flavor in your coffee. The lavender has real lavender in it. The rosemary, it has rosemary in it. There's actually salt and bits of caramel in the salted caramel. And, there's little bits of cinnamon in the churro. I really like it a lot. It's super easy to carry around with you, the dry stuff, and then, if you can find hot water, make yourself a cup of coffee. So, it's nicer than a K-cup, and not as much hassle as a French press, but it's good, nice pour-over coffee. And if you're like, hey, I have my own little metal thing that I do pour-over coffee with, and I just use coffee from the store, well, good for you. That's really nice and probably way better for the environment. But if you like the coffee from Copper Cow Coffee, you can buy it in whole bean. So check it out, Copper Cow Coffee. Links in the show notes. Thank you once again for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. You can help show your support by going to the show notes and following any of the links that'll tell you how to support the show and how to support our guests. And thank you to all of our guests who you can find in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, and remember, patrons get priority access to asking us questions, suggesting topics, even, submitting stuff. Actually, you don't have to be a patron to submit anything. That's how Dave got on the show, and that's how you can get on the show, too. It's the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for listening. Back to the show. This episode is brought to you by California Tea House. California Tea House is a family-owned tea store where you can find some of the world's best loose-leaf tea and organic herbal tea blends. Like a fine wine, there is no comparison between fine loose-leaf and common broken-leaf tea bags. Check them out. They have quite a bit of pretty awesome tea collections. I'm a huge fan of their white teas. They have a tea club that you can join, but, they've got green tea, black tea, white tea, oolong, Robios, and herbal tea. They've also got teaware. So check out California Tea House in the show notes.
So I'm really excited. We've got Mark Miller on the show today. And Mark, maybe if you could tell the audience just a little bit about who you are and a little bit about you.
All right. Hi, my name, thank you very much for having me. My name is Mark Miller, as you said, and I most recently have been writing slipstream or absurdist fiction. In 2019, Montag Press published my first novel, The Librarian at the End of the World, and they have also accepted my new novel, which is forthcoming later this year, I think early December, and it is called The Two-Headed Lady at the End of the World, and it is a romance novel about conjoined twins and the men who love them, and two men who are stationed in an underground military bunker who that have been abandoned, and they are stuck down there, and they have to kind of acknowledge their growing attraction to one another. And also about a sentient CPU in charge of America's missile defense system who falls in love with a fax machine at the Pentagon.
As happens.
As could be expected, I suppose.
Yeah. Now, you've got actually a treat for us. You've got a little bit of a reading for us today, don't you?
Yeah, I'm going to give just read a random excerpt from the novel, and I did this by opening a computer and scrolling and stopping, and so.
Is this the original novel or the new one?
No, this is the new one. This is the one that is forthcoming in December.
Ooh, a sneak preview.
A sneak preview.
All right. Well, then if maybe you could let us know a little bit about it, and I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so the novel is about two twins, Amanda and Miranda Morgan, who were born in a small town called Wamba, Texas, and because of a secret particle accelerator program that's happening beneath their family farm without their knowledge, there's an accident, and they are irrevocably conjoined. So they went from being regular twins to conjoined twins. And this is the story of them and the men who love them. And so one of the suitors, Amanda's high school boyfriend, was named Jack. And after they graduated, after a disastrous prom night, they went their separate ways. But they still have unresolved feelings for one another. And Jack is currently in basic training with a drill sergeant named Orville Mathis. And he goes to sleep one night and has this dream. That night, Jack dreamed of Amanda. A rampaging T-Rex was destroying downtown Texarkana. Drill Sergeant Mathis said, "It's moving toward the munitions under the old hotel. The Russians are onto us somehow. This is Peach, their secret weapon." "Peach," clarified Jack. "Peach," reiterated Mathis. He lit a victory cigar, such was his confidence. Jack squinted at the beast. "What do you need us to do?" "Ooh, who is your lady friend?" Drill Sergeant Mathis eyed Amanda like a bowl of clam chowder. "My name is Orville. You don't happen to have a sister, cousin, mother, aunt, niece, or daughter, do you?" Jack did a double take. Miranda was no longer conjoined to her. "Where's your sister?" he asked. "I only want you," said Amanda. "Now let's go kill the Razorbacks." "What? No." They were at a football game. Was it homecoming? The homecoming game that Jack would have invited Amanda to had either liked football or not been an outcast. The Razorbacks had peaches on their helmets. "Where's your sister?" "I cut her off for you. I knew she would always come between us, and I know you always get what you want." "The T-Rex is destroying the hotel," shouted Orville Mathis, now in civilian attire. "That goddamn maggot-encrusted tilapia burger with the stumpy frog leg arms." Amanda pointed. "It's just right over there, near the concession stand." "Did you ever try frog legs?" asked Orville. "They can be very romantic." "No, I only take my Frito chili pies with extra jalapenos. Besides, the hotel is over there." Jack pointed to where downtown should have been. "It's been moved." Miranda stared, mouth agape, astonished by the empty blackness, a void at the edge of town. Downtown had been transported beneath the bleachers and shrunk into a snow globe on the concession stand's counter. "Orville is right." Jack tried to get his bearings. "Where are we?" "That is drill sergeant to you, you hot dog water wastrel." Then they were all tiny, and the T-Rex was destroying the miniature model of downtown. They looked at the concession stand and saw a snow globe on its counter, a snow globe within a snow globe, infinite snow globes all the way down. Jack looked around for the T-Rex. Let's not get distracted. The Frito chili pies smelled delicious, but they were serving them with peaches. That way, Amanda pointed. The cars were all on fire. What the goddamn hell? Jack reached for his sawback machete. This shit is vegetarian. Drill Sergeant Mathis puffed his chest, displaying a full array of medals. He threw his Frito chili pie with warm peach compote topping onto the ground and stomped it. They ran out from under the bleachers toward downtown. The night sky held the greenish hue, foretelling a tornado. Jack did a double take and was relieved to realize it was only the snow globe's dome. One disaster's enough for now, he said. Mathis nodded and stared ahead at the enemy. That's right, Thrasher. Our plate is full. Then he eyed Amanda up and down. With delicious clam chowder. Amanda dry-heaved. Gross, you pig. Barbecue. The veteran licked his lips. The T-Rex hurled enormous tubs of Vaseline with its tiny arms, and they exploded on impact. Jack mounted his motorcycle, Amanda behind him, and they hurtled through distance and time at the rampaging beast, the engine whining and screaming into the dark night air. Ahead was the old hotel, a T-Rex with cybertronic laser beam eyes, and apparently a secret munitions stash the Russians had somehow found out about. It was 1986, and the fall air was crisp and auspicious. This was back when the future seemed possible, and that things would change for the better. Jack felt happy and hopeful, having not yet come to understand just how we would waste the world. Amanda said, "It smells like the fair, doesn't it? Every fall, just like this, when the fair travels to town." Jack breathed dissent in. God, I love this moment, but holy shit, we need to focus. That thing has laser beam eyes. They were on Birch Street now, headed right at the heart of the maelstrom. The road was slick with Vaseline. Flames climbed the dark sky. People screamed and leaped to their deaths from the top of the hotel. Jack glared hard at the road ahead. We only have one shot at this. I love you. Amanda held on tight. Jack pointed his bike at an impromptu ramp made by a long slab of concrete resting atop a smoldering school bus. Then they were airborne, the smell of Frito chili pies engulfing their senses, and in the distance, on the skyline, they saw Ferris wheel's lights. Amanda breathed deeply. Look, the fair. You can smell the funhouse from here. Miranda pointed to a garish glow on the horizon. You're right. I see corn dogs everywhere. Jack wondered how the fair got way over there. Wait, what? Where'd you come from? Glad you're back, sis, said Amanda. I've missed you. Then he was falling. Jack woke in his bunk with a dwindling erection. Somewhere in the distance, someone was cooking peach cobbler and chili, hopefully not in the same pot.
Well, I've got to admit, I really enjoyed all of that. I mean, can't wait for the book to come out.
Thank you. It's I mean, that was a dream sequence, so that's a little more random than the rest of it, but it's but that's the kind of thing I do.
And I'm just going to kind of throw this out, but ironically, I was in Texarkana, Texas for a little bit. I had some friends that lived there within about a couple years, around 1987.
Okay. Well, how about that? What were you doing? What took you to Texarkana?
I had some friends that lived there. And what I remember the most about it is that the city is, and you probably did a lot of research. I don't know if you've ever been there, but half the city is on the Texas side, and the other half is on the Arkansas side.
I did more than research. I lived there for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the Texas side was dry, and the Arkansas side was full of bars.
Yes. That was precisely the situation.
Well, no, I'm excited for the book to come out. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you said around December, correct?
Yes.
And by all means, when we post this, please send us some links. But if somebody listening besides me wants to get a copy of this book, what's the best way?
The best way is going to be on Amazon at this point. You can also look at montagpress.com. but Amazon is your best bet.
Okay, excellent. Now, there's obviously, and I get this is a dream sequence, but there's a lot of absurdism in this story, which I love. What are some of your ideas about absurdism?
Well, okay, so I was interviewed about my last book, The Librarian at the End of the World, by the Locust Review, which is a really excellent publication dedicated to the end of capitalist realism. And we talked about the increasing difficulty of satirizing a world that has utterly and completely jumped the shark. The idea is that the world is far too ridiculous at this point to criticize or to, as they say, reflect on in an irrealist manner or satirize. And so I wrote an absurdist novel about people cultivating cheese out of celebrity bacteria. And damned if between acceptance and publication if there was not an exhibit about cheese made from the armpit bacteria of musicians at the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Yep.
And it's like the whole world is Poe's law now. It's like martial law for assholes. But we can't really do anything to fight it. Not really. So we might as well just make fun of it and point out its inconsistencies.
Absolutely. And if I tried to write what happened between 2016 and 2022 and went back in time and tried to sell it in 2010, I would be told, no way, this is unrealistic.
After they accepted this book for publication, they suggested that I write a foreword to it, and if we have time when we're done with the interview portion, I'll read the foreword because I kind of touch on that.
Excellent. And also thinking, is there something really about this time that is so ripe for absurdism?
Oh, exceptionally so. Most of my life has been spent in just confounding confusion about why everything is happening. All right. And there's this old saying, they say that those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. And really, the only thing that I've benefited from knowing history from, or the only way that knowing history has benefited me, is that I've gotten to watch as people who don't know history doom us to repeat it. So it's like the end of Candide, let us tend to our garden. These days I really like gardening. I've really got a fantastic garden in my yard, and I like long walks and bourbon. Because that's kind of my coping, because the world is fucking insane right now. It's also good to love people and to be loved, because I think people are more important than art. But for absurdism now, I think all you really need is plausibility. The world has gotten so stupid that what else are you going to do? You can't make this stuff up. There are museum exhibits of celebrity bacteria cheese. It's just, who knew that, like 10 years ago, if you told me, Donald Trump is going to be president and, we're going to start talking about mutually assured destruction again and, like warming up our nukes. I wouldn't have believed it because, that's one of the things when you grew up in the 80s. I don't know how old you are, but if you were alive in the 80s, one of the things that you were always aware of was the threat of like nuclear exchange. And
exactly. So I'm an 80s kid, and I grew up in California next to a Navy base.
Okay.
And we would drive by, going into LA, we'd drive by these big giant satellites. And I remember my scoutmaster pointing out, that's where they bounce all those signals off to the submarines. We'll be a secondary target come the nuclear war.
Yeah. Excellent. It reminds me of a story that an old girlfriend of mine told me. A really talented musician named Shelley Miller, and a good friend of mine still. She was living in Germany at the time, and it was right during the heart of the Cold War, and she went to the school and they had a mascot called Grady the Gorilla that was just ridiculous. But one day she's in class and there's a grave announcement over the intercom. It's like, students, we have a very important urgent message. And she automatically, oh my God, the nukes have been launched. We're all going to die. Cold War tensions. And it was like, over the weekend, someone vandalized Grady the gorilla. And she just started laughing and got in trouble. And they suspected her of doing it because she was laughing at the vandalism of Grady the gorilla. But it's just the kinds of things we were expected to give a shit about in the face of nuclear annihilation. It's pretty comical.
Yeah. So what are maybe some other? Is there? I mean, you lived through it, but you seem sort of as an expert on the Cold War and the '80s. What are some things that maybe you got from that?
First off, I'm not an expert on the Cold War, but I did have a front row seat for the '80s era propaganda. Before the Berlin Wall fell. It's weird. People like to categorize Hollywood as some kind of bastion of leftism, but really, they're just capitalists. Like Red Dawn was this far-right wing fever dream of jingoism, nationalism, and NRA-fueled propaganda and paranoia. And then a couple of years later, Top Gun basically traded script oversight to the U.S. Department of Defense to get greater access to military hardware. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like an agreement. Okay, yeah, but you've got to make us look good. Yeah. Funny side note to that. My sister's high school boyfriend was in the brig of the carrier that they filmed Top Gun on during filming. He was a bit of a nonconformist, and they didn't appreciate that he was always like wearing Vans to line up and stuff. But there's a journalist named Robert Stahl who used a FOIA request to gain access to like 30,000 pages of documents where like the CIA and the Pentagon had script oversight for like 2,500 scripts throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I guess the thinking was that we had to make America look good and the other guys look bad. And that's not to say that America isn't better than some places, but the use of art to create, I guess you'd call it like a politically usable culture is really grotesque and evidence that we aren't nearly as free as we think we are. And holy Christ, there's like a new Top Gun movie. And so Trump is in the news again, and Russia is talking about the nukes, and the Supreme Court is letting red states outlaw abortion and criminalize miscarriages, and Ron DeSantis is trying like hell to shove all the gay people back in the closet, and this is crazy talk. I mean, we won this fight back in the 90s. We went through this in the 80s, we beat them in the 90s, and now they're back. And like so much of what is happening now can be traced back to back then. But the Berlin Wall fell, and we all kind of got a good laugh that Putin installed himself in Russia, and here we are. All we need right now is like a deck of Garbage Pail cards and some, Garbage Pail Kids and some Satanic Panic.
Yeah, maybe some good Cali punk come out of it,
right? I was just listening to California Uber Alice on the way up here.
Yep. Maybe some Black Flag or Social Distortion come up with some new songs for us.
Right.
Now, this is sort of our signature question, and I definitely, if you don't mind, I'll have you read that preface before we end. But this is kind of a question we always ask people. If you could be in charge of any creative project, don't have to worry about money, support, copyrights. What is your dream project?
If I could do anything, I would just make weird installation art. I want to make spaces, atmospheric spaces, like some kind of hybrid of Marina Abramovic and Bill Viola and Boss John Otter, who are my top 3 favorite artists. But yeah, that's what I do, is just make weird installation art where people could go in and experience things.
Oh, okay. Well, cool. And did you say that you had that forward you could read for us?
You know what? Let me find that. Let me scroll all the way back to the beginning of the document.
Thank you.
And
you're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Any minute now. Sorry,
No.
Scrolling on a Mac is not as fast.
That's okay.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Okay, any minute now.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander.
Good God.
You're listening
Know any good
to
jokes while we wait?
KZOM.
So, define good.
I think good is a nonsense word. I'll leave that up to your interpretation.
Yes, I'm having sort of a brain freeze on jokes here. I'm afraid.
That's all right. All right. I got to the forward. You're saved.
So your computer says, "Oh no, he's going to talk again." Quick, find it before David talks again.
All right. So here we go. So the forward of the novel. We were talking about hiding under our desks when the nukes came. That was the straight-faced suggestion made by people in positions of authority. After the initial blast, we were to... Hold on, the dog's forget. Hold on, let me let the dog in. Let's go, dog.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio. You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Okay, sorry about that. Fortunately, you can edit that out.
The dogs probably could hear my goats in the background.
Okay, so I'll start the forward over again.
Okay.
We were talking about hiding under our desks when the nukes came. That was the straight-faced suggestion made by people in positions of authority. After the initial blast, we were to wash our hair with strong soap and seek a fallout shelter. There we could live the remainder of our days in sterile comfort, eating canned foods and wondering what the outside world was like. If we survived long enough, we would all die of starvation, exposure, or cancer at a more leisurely pace. It was a mundane paradise compared to being incinerated so quickly that only our shadows were left, burned on the sidewalk beneath us, or beneath where we once stood, a millisecond to go before we were incinerated. I swear, this is a book about love, and the 80s were supposed to be incidental. But then Donald Trump was in the news again for no good reason, thinking people could imagine. Papa resumed preaching. Florida tried to shove all their gay people back in the closet. The Supreme Court found a matching set of Wham shirts at Goodwill, and it was like 80s reruns were playing in all dimensions. At this point, all we would need to have a complete set of Garbage Pail Kids is some good satanic panic. But I digress. Round about 1987, we were all in history class. Zero Steve Ham Snazzy, so-called because he liked the Surf Nazis Must Die movie, not because he thought there was a master race that he was a part of somehow in spite of his obvious shortcomings, and I, talking about instantaneous death, when the first seedlings of this novel were planted. What if I got lucky and found someone desperate enough to go to prom with me, but then we all died before the big night? I laughed out loud and had to explain myself to the class, which was awkward because no one else got the joke. Flaming death never fell from the sky, which was a bit of a shame because prom was shit too. But if you've been keeping up with current events, you might be worried for the first time in a long time that we're all going to die. That's the feeling of the 80s hitting the fan and blowing back on us. Armageddon of one kind or another was always lurking around the corner. I spent 30 years not thinking about mutually assured destruction, and it would just figure that the second this book was about to come out, Russia would start prattling on and on about how awesome its nukes are. I suppose if it comes to blows, it will be less painful than global warming, so everyone lighten up already. Besides, this is a book about the kind of romance that transcends prom and global annihilation. Love in all its many manifestations reigns supreme. Stick with it, you'll see. And if you lived through the 80s, you might get a little wistful. But that's just nostalgia fucking with you. You can't go back, nor should you want to. The 80s were shit, so don't try.
Excellent.
Thank you.
One of my mother's favorite quotes is, nostalgia is like sex. Every generation thinks that they invented it.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure. I know she got it from someone, but yeah. So I have really, really enjoyed talking to you.
And thank you so much for having me. I did too.
And so, what again will be the name of your new book?
The name of the book is The Two-Headed Lady at the End of the World, subtitled A Romance Hotter Than 1,000 Suns.
And your book before that is The Librarian at the End of the World. Are they related, or should we get...
Same universe. I'm going to write a third book called The Walrus at the End of the World, which will end the trilogy.
Okay, excellent. So, I mean, of course, we want everyone to buy both of your books, but would you suggest they get the first one first before they read the second one?
They are not sequential. You can read them in whatever order.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, we will definitely put some links out there, and you think that it'll be December-ish, just right in time?
I think it's going to be December 12th.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, David. It was a real pleasure.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Here are your hosts, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classic and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Bryce, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival. Classic monsters, modern talk, and the head of Rondo Hatton. Only on Monster Kid Radio.
It is time for D&D on D&D. I am DB, and this is Dave. We're talking about Dungeons & Dragons. And Dave, do you remember what we're talking about with Dungeons & Dragons today?
We are talking about oozes and plants and undead.
Ooh, that's one of those everyone knows is one of my favorites to use, that being undead, which we'll save the best for last. Oozes. What do we know about oozes, Dave?
Well, they ooze.
Okay, cool.
So I heard it the classic ooze is going to be the green slime.
The green slime, yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. Someone brought it up, and I think they're right, but I haven't double-checked. Green slime does not appear in the monster manual. It appears in the Dungeon Master's Manual.
Oh, yeah. It's a natural hazard, though.
Because it's considered more of a trap than a creature.
Yeah.
At least for 5e now. We're talking 5e. So that's kind of the big thing. I think that most people, and I think most players, at least old school players, think of them as low level. Low CR. But that most as roadblocks or traps.
Yeah. Question: would a fungus that emits sound or something, is that an ooze or is that a plant?
And they exist. They exist. I know at least in First AD, I think they're classified. And again, this is mainly just to make it easier on the rules and the DM, but I think they're classified as a plant.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, I was thinking about it as it was a stationary thing that, Anyway, so oozes aren't always stationary. You've got the dreaded gelatinous cube, 5 by 5 by 5 slime that's primarily used to clean up dungeons, honestly, and as a trap for people in low-light situations who aren't paying attention.
I heard of someone had written a scenario, but basically it was the wizard wanted a new outhouse, so they had to go out and capture a gelatinous cube. He'd dig a hole, put it down, so that basically he'd have something to poop on. And he'd throw all his poop when he... But I think they're, like I said, they seem as low level.
Yeah.
So if you want to really mess up your players, it could look like an Ooze and then be a Shoggoth.
Oh, yeah. Something I was going to say, which, is kind of used in the Shadow over Innsmouth, is like a Shoggoth in water, which I'm like, that sounds terrifying. Shoggoths can swim. But using a gelatinous cube in water, or using oozes in water, instead of water weirds, like you have like a moat with several gelatinous cubes in it, or you have a sunken dungeon that has several gelatinous cubes in it, or slimes of various sorts. When it comes to oozes, I generally don't mess around with anything other than black puddings and gelatinous cubes, because those ones have always been kind of like the classics for me.
They've been, since every printing that I've ever seen in the game.
Yeah.
But if you want to make it, you want to up the CR.
Sure.
Make them like a hive mind.
Ooh, that's cool.
Make them smart, and that they can communicate, if maybe not either telepathy or telepathically. So, you wipe out this one little tiny one. Well, now you got this huge one coming.
Yeah.
Or when they combine, they create intelligence.
Oh, yeah, like cranial rats or something. But yeah. Or if they combine, they create a massive giant cube, like, I think the bad guy in Yoshi's Island level 1, just a bunch of slimes that then form into a giant king slime.
Okay.
I think so. It's been a while.
I missed that game.
I know. Anyway, what other oozes do we have? What other slimes do you think are notable? And what does a black pudding do?
Well, you can't eat the black pudding until you eat your black meat.
Okay, that's true. How can you have your black meat? Yeah.
Yes. So, they're mainly used as traps, as this thing coming down the hallway, or the pit, or a hole opens up in the roof and it falls in on you.
Yeah.
They're slow moving, and they sort of have, they're seen as, eating like a giant amoeba, or acidic, like, the xenomorph. Again, I think you can maybe sort of, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but an ooze golem.
Ooze. Yeah. Probably one of the coolest ways I've ever seen an ooze delivered is, I can't remember the name of the module. It was one of these, like, 25 years of Dungeons and Dragons. And what I do remember about the module, it was mostly, like, Yuan-Ti antagonists. And at one point, when you come into the dungeon early on, there's some orcs with rings of invisibility on, and they're holding glass staffs that one end is a big glass bubble that contains a black pudding, and they'll attack you with the glass staff first, and then attack you with their claws and bite and all that kind of fun stuff.
And I think if it had been written now...
Yeah.
It would have been kobolds.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Kobolds are a lot smarter than they were in 2nd edition.
and they're also sort of the trap masters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember these were like trolls with like armor on, and it's like, okay, so someone put armor on trolls and gave them tools to, okay, and that's cool. But yeah, no, it's like I then took something like that and then turned it into something a bit like a chandelier rigged to fall, and like some of parts of the chandelier contained slimes or puddings or whatever. But yeah.
And if you want to borrow something from another game, the toxic waste spirits from Shadowrun.
Oh, yeah.
So, we see oozes sort of as these natural occurring, if not horrific creatures, but, make them a result of, the waste from the mill or something.
Oh, yeah. Or even, like, going back to, like, 1st and 2nd edition, you could have them come from some sort of blasted heath, not you, some sort of blasted heath where it's like magic went wild here, or there was a wizard duel, or some sort of unholy site or something like that, and that's where this type of pudding, or maybe make a hell pudding that has all the resistances that a fiend would have, but it's a pudding, or a gelatinous cube, a hell cube, a demon cube, or make it spherical and highly radioactive, and then call it the demon sphere.
Yes.
And that joke's out there for all my demon sphere enthusiasts and nuclear accident enthusiasts. So oozes, they're crazy, but plants are pretty crazy too. Plants that are enemies, that's it doesn't have to be a sentient plant person. It can be fungal spores that shoot stuff. It could be plants that are carnivorous plants, like we've talked about in the past. It could be vines that can attach. It can be nettle shooters. I mean, there's a wide variety of plants out there, and there's a lot of plants that mimic things that we think of as like constructed things, like lanterns. Plants made out of lanterns made out of plants because of some sort of chemical reaction. Dave, what else do we got?
Well, of course we've got the Trents. And I think it's Ent in Lord of the Rings and Trent in D&D because of the lawsuit.
Okay, all right.
So obviously we've got plant people, but you've got other things. I mean, an Audrey 2 type Venus flytrap.
Sure, yeah.
There's a really good horror story that has absolutely nothing to do with biology and reality.
Okay.
By Arthur Conan Doyle.
Ooh.
And where it's in Arizona, and this guy basically gets, because Arthur Conan Doyle apparently thought there were giant Venus flytraps in the desert of Arizona.
Yeah.
And so at the end they come across this body that been drained of all of its fluid, stuck in the mouth of a flying of a giant Venus flytrap.
Yeah.
The other thing is plants are so they can either be food or they can be poison.
Yeah.
And when we say poison, it's kind of generic in D&D, but it could be like an allergy that humans have to it,
sure.
Or elves have to it.
Yeah, no, and not only can you have poisonous plants, you can have venomous plants.
Exactly. But, plants could also, you have a speak with plant spell. So they could also be the helper.
Sure, yeah, if they're intelligent enough. Is a Shrambling Mound a plant?
I was thinking that it was a monster, but I'm gonna check that for you.
Okay, yeah, no, I feel like there's all kinds of humanoids based off of whatever kind of plant life there is. There's mushroom people, seaweed people, moss people, thorn people, tree people of all different shapes and sizes. Like, you have the treants, but you also have, like, I don't know, things that look like little branch, like Baby Groot kind of stuff, long before Baby Groot, but not before Groot, 'cause, I don't know. Groot predates D&D. But, no, you've got all kinds of, I don't know, I want to say, like, things that look like other animals but are actually plants, and you can easily add the plant.
So shambling monsters, at least according to Black Citadel, are plants.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I thought they had the plant type.
Yeah.
And the thing about them is if you hit them with lightning, they get bigger. So,
Like Godzilla.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's King Kong.
King Kong gets bigger with lightning?
He gets stronger.
Oh, okay. All right. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, plants. There's a lot of plants. You can use plants natural as like a natural defense or naturally occurring defense, or you can have an elaborate system of watering plants and making sure that they have light in your dungeon so that you can have magical plants or just deadly plants in your underground jungle where you have some sort of very powerful ion stone that generates ultraviolet light to feed the plants.
So spoiler for what is considered to be the worst M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Oh, The Happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it turns out it's plants making everybody kill themselves.
Yeah.
But you could have some sort of war with that.
Yeah.
A war with plants. The other, especially if you've got, like, if the plants are going to be intelligent, maybe they have their own plant gods.
True, very true. And I believe if, like, you go into D&D, like, there used to be, like, kind of like planty gods, but I also know for a fact if you want to steal some planty gods, Call of Cthulhu has some fungus gods for sure.
Yeah, or, an aspect of Nyarlathotep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and the thing is that plants, and we know it's not completely true, but logic and nature and experience says that it's not supposed to move.
Yeah.
So if it does move, it's not supposed to talk. But even if it does talk, or even if it does seem good, there's something unnatural about it.
Yeah. When I was talking about, like, magical plants, I mean, like, that's kind of what I'm talking about, like, plants that are able to do things that just a standard plant can't, like fire a longbow at you, or sing a song that makes you fall asleep while dispersing its pollen, which has a sleep effect, a natural sleep effect that only affects humanoids or something,
So we see two examples of that.
Yeah.
In The Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah.
The poppies. And the apple trees.
Yes. Yeah. So just Frank Albaum, you can rip off from that easily. I mean that's okay. Wizard of Oz is so easy to steal from and mold things into Dungeons and Dragons that maybe your players won't realize, started out in a gnome village and ended with hags. And Anyway, plants, you can do so much with plants. Plants, it's like you can do, like, I don't know, I feel like you could also, if you had, like, the right kind of, like, artificer types or plant-based druids or something, you could almost, like, use plants in ways kind of like biomechanics or like cybernetics or something like that, how you would use them in a cyberpunk thing. You could have plants that help you run faster and plants that help you jump higher and plants that help you see further. I don't know, maybe they emit some sort of dew that gets into your eyes that makes it so that you can see twice as far. Yeah, plants are cool.
Yes, they are.
But plants are not as cool as my favorite type. My favorite subclass. My favorite.
We saved the best for last?
Yes, we did. And that is Undead. And Dave, although it is my favorite, can you do me the honors of explaining what Undead are? And then we can start talking about all the cool Undead.
Yeah, and then also maybe my problem with the Undead.
Sure, go for it.
So, the undead are those that should be dead.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about things like this idea of a sentient plant is just unnatural to us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our minds since caveman days have been conditioned that the dead lie there.
Yeah.
And so there's this natural thought that if that changes,
Mm-hmm.
it can't be good.
Yeah.
That they come back, if they come back, we're broken or wrong or evil.
Yeah.
So so if they are innately evil, then they are opposed by those that are innately good, i.e. the divine gods.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's my problem with D&D, is you make this really, really awesome undead villain.
Yeah.
And the friggin' third level cleric just zaps it into dust.
Yeah. That's true.
And so, and there are ways to make them more powerful.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of my undead are given relics that cost more to make so they can't make them all go away.
Yeah.
And then so you plan it, you've got all these extra undead, and the cleric can't show up for that day, and now your party swarmed.
Yeah.
So
I've always felt common sense is the best tool for dealing with the undead. If there's certain types that will take levels away, take Constitution or whatever, that's when you put your priest up front. And when it's just like big dumb skeletons, it's like, hey everybody, let's just do this. And if you can't tell that they're undead, I mean, I'm always on the lookout for undead as a player character, or as a dungeon master. I'm always looking to hide the undead or put the undead in the least expected places. Maybe have a vizier for a king or emperor who is not a lich, but like maybe a vampire, or a kingdom still being ruled by an intelligent mummy sorcerer or something like that. It's always cool to have like undead be like the secret power behind the throne. In my opinion, I don't do it all the time because then people would just be like, okay, where's the lich? I say in a campaign setting that I've come up with, I'll use like maybe a lich once, and then kind of like either it's kind of like trickle down evil from a lich that gets killed towards the end of the game, that everything's been like all the undead stuff's been kind of coming out of this place, and it's like once we get rid of this guy, we don't have to worry about anything. Also, if you're dealing with things like illithids, things that use psionic abilities, they can't see the undead, and it's kind of a blind spot for them. Or here's another thing: if you have someone who is using someone who's using plants to attack stuff, why not use the undead to clear that out? Yeah, and I don't know. I think raising undead in some ways, in most ways, is considered like an evil act, or looked down by most churches. But
it's opposed to the divine.
Yeah.
It's taking the duty and the choices of the holy and giving it to him. That's why Frankenstein is so evil.
Sure.
Even though he's not evil,
Yeah.
but that's why people see Frankenstein as evil.
Definitely, because he's the unnatural. He's the other. Yeah.
Or I was thinking Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He is becoming unto God and does not have the power of a god.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, no. And yeah, no, if you have powerful player characters or powerful NPCs who like to do the Frankenstein thing, by that I mean raise the undead, it's like you can have people treat them in various ways when they come into a city, when they approach other people or whatever. I mean, there's something about them that seems off, possibly, and we're not talking about NPCs who make undead. We're talking about undead. And there's so many cool undeads. We've got wraiths, which wraiths? What's their big special power, Dave? I can't remember off the top of my head.
So I believe they are green. That they are basically powerful, sort of spiritual as opposed to physical. So I believe they only need or can only be hit by magic weapons.
Okay, all right.
And they're based on sort of a Scottish, very, very vaguely on Scottish mythology.
Sure, yeah.
And so I believe their primary attack is draining. I'm going to double check that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it is, it looks like it's magic or silver weapons.
Okay, all right.
And so that, if you don't, I mean, so you got a +1 weapon, you're pretty much okay. But if you don't have any magic weapons, or you're defenseless.
Yeah. No, that's another thing. It's like if you run across a wraith, know what your undead does, and if you have a cleric, make sure that they've taken enough stuff in religion that they can easily identify stuff, like the undead. Yeah,
and so it does kind of come from a lot of the beliefs that, undead take the life force.
Yeah.
Or in vampires, they take the blood from, the humans, the elves, so that they can exist in this dimension.
Yeah. And that's scary. I feel like
So you mentioned leeches.
Mm-hmm.
So leeches are a modern concept.
Yeah.
They were actually created for fantasy writing.
Okay.
And sort of codified as, I mean, the term may have existed, but they weren't really a major creature.
Yeah.
Until fantasy writings of the 60s and the 70s.
Okay.
And in a lot of ways, with vampires, they're the top of the pyramid.
Okay, yeah. Definitely. Although I feel like there's, like, some things that if you have a lich that is of this creature versus that creature, like a lich human is not as powerful as a Draco lich. But it probably takes all kinds of terrible things to make a dragon into a Draco lich, so...
A terrible necronomic dragon.
Yeah.
So that turns itself in. So yeah, they're going to start out pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And that's something that came up definitely in 3rd edition, was that the idea that the undead could be a template.
Yeah.
And that you could put it on exist, so you could have a giant skeleton.
Yeah. Or a zombie boar.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I really like the template system for various undead types. Like, you can just have, I mean, it's like if it has bones, or even if it has an exoskeleton, turning something that has, like, a skeletal structure into the undead. It's like, oh man, if you had, like, a giant crab carapace just laying there, maybe cast, raise undead and send it against people, and they won't know that it's, that they have to hit it with this stuff or that stuff, or, also, there's no reason you can't put your undead in armor. There's no reason you can't put alchemical traps within your skeletons or your zombies. There's no reason you can't treat the bodies themselves with alchemical things so that, like, when hit, your skeletons explode and release a gas or release metal shards everywhere, or anything like that. And zombies can be used to like spread bio stuff. In my opinion, you could use zombies to spread plagues. You know, infections, like, you know, the infectious type of zombie bites. You know, you can do that. I mean, I would hate to see the person who rounds up enough wraiths to, you know, mess up a local ecology, but I mean, I don't even know if you can round up wraiths or if wraiths are kind of stuck to a spot.
I'm not sure. I kind of did the opposite once, where I had the big bad basically put like masks, because all his zombies he put like masks on it, or like bags on their head, and so he sends out a bunch of, you know, mooks with bags on their head, and so, you know, go around moaning so that they think that you're undead. So the cleric wastes a you know, a rebuke or whatever.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so but it didn't work, and then they say, oh, the guy goes, ouch, you know, oh, okay, they're not undead, they're just pretending to be undead.
Oh yeah. No, and we could combine earlier things with the skeletons. Like, what if you put a big glass thing full of black pudding in the skeleton's rib cage, so that when it gets attacked, the black pudding then sprays out or jumps out or does its thing. Or why not have some skeletons with some, you know, spore, some sort of like exploding spore growing on them or in them, or, you know, cultivate slimes in skeletons to be a coexisting thing. You know, toxic plants to be, and a skeleton or a zombie to be a coexisting thing, or a mummy. I don't know, mummies are a little bit tricky, but like, you know, because they have to be all dried out and stuff. But yeah, no, I feel like you can do a lot just mixing these things in ways. It's like, not a hybrid creature, but a symbiotic creature. Like, I don't know, you have some sort of carnivorous plant that lives on a skeleton, and it gets to eat, and the skeleton fulfills its purpose, which is, you know, it's being commanded to attack living things, so, you know, hey. All right, anything else you wanted to talk about with Undead?
We pretty much covered the Undead and the Oozes and the plants.
But Dave, before we leave, do you have a favorite type of Undead?
I think this is from being a child and watching, you know, Jason and the Argonauts.
Sure.
Living skeletons are pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they are low-level game-wise. But, you know, there's stuff you can do to make them.
Oh, yeah. I love liches, but liches I don't think of as just, like, simple undead. But when it comes to, like, simple undead, I want to say wraiths are where it's at. You can put them in places, and if people are prepared, people are prepared. If they're not prepared, it's trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, hey, yeah, that's been Undead, Oozes, and Plants. Not in that order, of course. You just heard that. So, yeah.
We like to mix things up a little bit.
We do. And that's going to be the end of Monster Types. We're going to be talking about more D&D next week. And, yeah, we're going to be talking about more aspects of Nyarlathotep. And we're probably going to have a guest on. And more importantly, we're going to be here. You're going to be here. We're going to have a good time. And check out The Daily Show. Not the show on Comedy Central, but our daily show, and hear what cool pulp stories we've got going on this week and next week, and for the rest of October, and of course have a good, safe, spooky Halloween. Are you dressing the goats up this year, Dave?
So we've got a few goat costumes, but they don't last very long.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, yeah, no, I'm not sure what's going on. Here, we're happy that the rain is back, and also, we're going to be doing cemetery tours again, so if you come to Oleander, go to the mayor's residence, which isn't the mayor's residence anymore, the old mayoral, No, it's never been the mayor's residence. It's the Oleander House.
The
Oleander House, and behind the Oleander House is the cemetery, and I'm generally out there raking leaves or doing yard work or something like that, just around my house. But yeah, everything else is the city's doing it anyway. You didn't come here to talk about that. So next week, super excited about that, and also super excited about, I don't know, Halloween. And we'll see you next time, everyone. Have a good one. As always, this episode has been edited and produced by DB Spitzer, and middle segment edited by David Heath. Music is always by DB Spitzer, and you can check us out at People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos on Facebook. Go to @PGTTCM for the Twitter and for the Instagrams. Thank you so much, and we'll hear from you next time.
See you soon.
All right. See you then, everyone. That was a good episode.
Yeah.